In the course of our life, we're going to come across moments where we face difficulties. We live in a fallen world, and because of sin, it's inevitable that we will all face all kinds of challenges throughout it. But there are differences in those challenges. There are challenges that we may face that are difficult, but ultimately we know that we'll get through them. We may have to be uncomfortable for a time or work really hard to figure it out, but we can be confident that we're strong enough or smart enough to overcome that challenge that we're faced with. But then there are some challenges that we might have to face in our life that are much worse. The kind that no matter where you look, it seems like there's just no way out. You're surrounded by darkness, it feels like, and all you can think to yourself is, I can't do this. We might not even realize it in the moment, but it's at those seemingly hopeless times in our lives that we've accidentally bought into the lies of the devil, the one who's whispering in our ear that there's no way out. And if we truly believe that whatever we're going through is too much for us to endure, and there's no one who can save us in those moments, then what we're accidentally saying at the same time is that whatever it is that we're dealing with, it's ultimately more powerful than God. We're putting that above God then, which of course we know is not true. There's nothing more powerful than God. But the devil's goal is to have us forget that. He wants us to make it feel like God's distant, or that he doesn't care about the situation that we find ourselves in. When in reality, those are the moments that God desires to draw the closest to us. It's the moment that if we trust in him, it drives us into even deeper relationship with him, knowing that we can rely on him for even what seems impossible. Take the example of Abraham and his son Isaac from the first reading in Genesis. God decides to put Abraham's faith to the test. But Abraham doesn't know that. He doesn't know he's being tested. All he knows is that God asks him to sacrifice his son, his only son Isaac, whom he loves, and through whom God promised that he was going to fulfill, that he would be the father of a great nation. How can that happen if he sacrifices him? Abraham was just an ordinary man. When he was asked to sacrifice his son, imagine the kind of grief that he must have felt in his heart. He might have been tempted to feel trapped in darkness and despair. He could have complained or become angry with God, shouting about how unfair it was for him to be in this situation, especially at God's hand. But instead, we see something very different. We see that despite his fear and his pain, he trusted in God. In the full story, the longer version, that we see that him and Isaac were traveling with some other people when they got to the mountain. And when he got there, he said that he told the people that they were traveling with that him and his son were going to go and make a sacrifice to God, and then they both would be back. He wasn't lying to them. He truly believed that somehow God was all-powerful, and instead of thinking that he was trapped in a hopeless situation, he trusts that God would be able to do something impossible, to somehow raise his son from the dead and give him back to him. This is the kind of trust that we need to have in God when we find ourselves in those tough situations. That even when something seems impossible to overcome and there's no way out, we have to realize that we are thinking only in ways that we understand. God is not bound by our ways. Peter, James, and John get a glimpse of, this reality, this ultimate power, when they get to witness the transfiguration. They see just for a moment the Lord in his full and true glory that is far beyond anything anyone can imagine. Jesus knows his mission is to take that place of the sacrificial lamb. And he tells them that so that when his crucifixion comes, they can understand the resurrection. They'll be able to encourage the faithful then, hopefully, that Christ has not only defeated death, but death itself has no power over him. And as St. Paul said, if God is for us, who can be against us? If we're united to Christ, we have no need to fear any challenge, trial, difficulty, persecution, not even death itself. All of these simply become methods that we can use to unite our sufferings to Christ on the cross and dive ever more deeper into our relationship with him.